It's just enough for me to get it.
Call to order a regular meeting, Goodyear City Council, Monday, June 9, 2008. Please join Council Member, Vice Mayor Antoniak in the Pledge of Allegiance and Invocation.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join me in our invocation if you wish. Dear Father, thank you for bringing us together this evening to make decisions about the future of the city of Goodyear and the Southwest Valley. Give us the wisdom and fortitude and courage to make decisions that are wise for the future of our city and that represent our community. We thank you for allowing our citizens to travel safely for a monumentous occasion on the All-America City in Florida, and thank you for blessing them with that great award. And lastly, as our Honorable Senator Flake and his family go through, or in his passing, go through difficult times with their family, we hope that your hand is with them. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Yeah, that was
Okay, thank you. All council members are in attendance. We have no expenditures to approve or ratify. Communications, we have Jennifer Campbell on a presentation of a plaque. Doesn't look like Jennifer to me.
She's on vacation. I'm filling in. Mayor, Council, we'd like to present this plaque for Roscoe Park. The park was named after Roscoe. Roscoe was Goodyear's first police dog. The plaque will be displayed at the entrance of the park on a cement pedestal. We will be installing this plaque this week. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Great. Can you bring it a little closer so I'd like to touch it anyway, if I could.
Very nice.
stand up. It's real.
It's not plastic?
No, it's a real.
It's heavy.
Looks good. That's good.
Thank you very much. Opportunity now for any resident or citizen of Goodyear to comment on any item which is not on this evening's agenda. Any item not on this evening's agenda, would anyone like to comment? Mr. Gelser.
Start the timer.
3 minutes.
Just kidding, Gary.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, as Vice Mayor Antoniak said, let me be the first citizen to congratulate the City Council on winning the All-American City Award. And I think it's a great honor. And it's something that the city needs to talk about far and wide to people who want to live here, to businesses that want to come here, and to people who visit the city. And as you well know, I am a proponent of signs and monuments. And so I am going to ask City Council to direct our budget director to create a new line item so that we can erect in the near future, in the next year's fiscal budget, signs that say, welcome to Goodyear. You know, 2008, All-American City. We don't have to date it. We can just leave it there so they age and weather nicely. But I think appropriate signs should be part of next year's budget, and I hope that you can find some money to do this and recognize the honor that the city has won. Again, thank you for all your work on doing this.
Thank you very much. We thank all the citizens of Goodyear because we all participated in this award. Thank you, Gary. And would you take that as an action to get back to us?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Go to the consent agenda, and I'll ask the city clerk to read consent items A through L by title only, please.
Item A, approved draft minutes of a work session and regular meeting held on May 12, 2008. A work session, regular meeting, and a special meeting held on May 19, 2008. Item B, approve the issuance of a utility easement to Arizona Public Service Company within the Lum Wastewater Lift Station, which will authorize the placement and access for maintenance of electrical equipment necessary to provide power to the lift station. Item C, authorize the city manager to execute a professional service contract with Tata and Howard Incorporated in the amount of $197,565 to prepare a non-comprehensive facilities plan for the Corgate Water Reclamation Facility. Item D, approve the issuance of a utility easement to Arizona Public Service Company within the development complex of the Goodyear Recreational Sports Complex to allow the placement of electrical equipment necessary to provide electrical service to the development complex. Item E, adopt Resolution 08-1242 authorizing the city manager and city attorney to execute an intergovernmental agreement providing for the Regional Water Cooperative to provide interoperable radio communication systems and services to the city of Goodyear. Item F, adopt Resolution 08-1238 authorizing the presiding judge and city attorney to execute an intergovernmental agreement providing for the Superior Court of Arizona in Maricopa County to provide jury services to the Goodyear Municipal Court. Item G, approve a request from Dean Ambari, representing A Taste of Italy Pizza and Restaurant Incorporated, for a Series 12 liquor license number 120-77603 for A Taste of Italy Pizza and Restaurant located at 3910 South Estrella Parkway, Suite 102, Goodyear, Arizona, northwest corner of Estrella Parkway and MC 85. Item H, approve the appointment for 9 months of the following Goodyear residents to the Ethics Committee: Stephen Anderson, Denise Bates, Greg Brown, Sergio Escamilla, Sanford Hertz, Maxine Hill, Greg Eidelman, Mike Lauer, Regine Mitchell, Ken Porter, and Catherine Wallinger, and authorize the city manager to execute all related documents. Item I, A, adopt Resolution 08-1224 authorizing the city manager to submit the following grant applications to the Gila River Indian Community Employee Wellness Program, Public Art Project, Field Lighting, Live Scan System, and a pass-through application from Homeward Bound. B, authorize the city manager to sign all documents associated with these grants. Item J, approve the City of Goodyear Fire Building Property Maintenance Code Board of Appeals bylaws. Item K, adopt Resolution 08-1240, approving and authorizing city manager to execute a settlement and release agreement between the City of Goodyear and Sasser Interest LLP, and a purchase and sale agreement between the City of Goodyear and Squaw Peak Goodyear LLC, Limited, relating to the city's acquisition of property interest needed for the Van Buren Street widening project and the Bullard Wash Channel Improvements Phase 2 project, authorizing city manager or his designee to take all actions and execute all documents necessary to carry out the intent of this resolution and the two agreements referred to therein, including but not limited to accepting on behalf of the city all conveyances of real estate interests provided for in the agreements and providing for an effective date. Item L, authorize the city manager to execute a contract amendment with Brown & Caldwell in the amount of $946,329 to provide site work, design, and construction management of facility improvements to comply with current City of Goodyear design guidelines.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone in the public wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Would anyone on council wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Councilmember Cavalier?
Yeah, L, I'd like to have further explanation on it.
Is it all right if we just go to that?
Yes.
Okay, all right. That's the Bullard Water Campus, and that's probably Sean, or... Why don't you ask your question?
Just what this entails in the 900.
Mayor, members of the council, we're seeking approval for a contract amendment with Brown & Caldwell for $946,000. We have a contract in place with Brown & Caldwell for 2 phases of the Bullard Water Campus. It's approximately $12.5 million. The first phase was about $6 million. I'm rounding up the figures, and the second phase was about $6.5, and that was to complete a permanent Bullard facility, which would include a building and 7 reverse osmosis skids. As we started to finalize the scope of the project and bring the project to completion, we had met with SunMP and with some of the other property owners in the area and determined that we needed to make some modifications to the site plan just so it would blend in better with the facilities that SunMP is planning and with the primarily baseball village. So this amendment is to provide Brown & Caldwell the funding to complete the interior site work, which is essentially moving some of the large piping, kind of the plumbing inside the plant, move those facilities around, and then complete design on a final, I guess, we're calling them aesthetic improvements, which would be a new block wall around the facility that would, again, blend in better with the neighbor, I guess the neighbors, primarily Sun and Peace development, and then also would include landscape improvements. We've met with the Community Development Department and looked at the landscaping requirements, again, just trying to blend in with the neighborhood. So that's what this primarily this amendment is for.
And that wasn't considered in the first contracts?
No, it wasn't, and that was, I think what had happened was when the project started in 2006, we were moving very quickly to try to secure water resources and to firm up our capacity, and it was an oversight on the Water Resources Department.
So this was an oversight on staff's part?
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't an issue with the contract or the consultant. It was staff.
Because my concern is that some contractors come back and ask for more money and more money for adding to what their contract was originally initiated for.
Correct.
And I thought this might be one of those, and I didn't want that to be become a problem with. Are they through now, or are they going to come back and ask for more?
Well, what they're going to do is like I had mentioned, they're going to finish the site work, which is kind of the internal plumbing, and then complete the design specifications on a new block wall.
Okay.
We'll send that block wall out to bid. We'll do a competitive bid process. We think we'll get a very, very competitive price given market conditions. There's probably a lot of very hungry contractors, and then based off of the cost, we'll assign a budget number to that, and then look at potential funding, and then try to get that done in advance of baseball so that we're in, the facility's cleaned up, landscaping's in place, so that when spring training rolls around, we'll just kind of blend in with the neighborhood.
Is that on Sun and Peace property?
The land is getting deeded to the city from Sun MP, so it'll be City of Goodyear property. We've got an existing booster and storage facility that the city owns, and we're acquiring some additional property that this site sits on, and Sun MP has been very, very good to work with. And again, I think it was important that as they develop the style, and I'm not an architect, and that's more Harvey's department, but the style of the facility, it's still a water campus, so it's not really that sexy of a building, but we wanted it to blend in as best as it could with the neighborhood, so that when other development occurs, it's not this eyesore that says, oh boy, that's the water tank and treatment facility.
And we want it to blend in with this cement too.
Yes.
That's the next problem. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so you're satisfied with the response?
Yes,
Okay.
very much so.
Okay, then, could I have a motion to approve consent agenda items A through L, please?
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Councilmember Lord and a second from Vice Mayor Antoniak. Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Antoniak?
Aye.
Councilmember Souza?
Aye.
Councilmember Cavalier?
Aye.
Councilmember Lord?
Aye.
Councilmember Holland?
Aye.
Councilmember Osborne?
Aye.
Mayor Kavanaugh?
Aye.
Passed 7-0.
Okay, we'll now move to the business part of our agenda. First is to consider adoption of resolution for the ground lease agreement between Goodyear and Franklin Pierce. Rourke Massey will present.
I know how to clear a room. Mayor, members of the council, good evening. For the second time, it is my pleasure to stand in front of you and present to you an agreed-to lease agreement, or a proposed lease agreement for the lease of 30 acres of city-owned property just north of Yuma and Estrella to a private university as a result of the city's mission to bring private education to the city of Goodyear. After a number of sessions, negotiating with Raymond I've always called you Raymond, so I'm going to mispronounce your last name. Is it Vander Wright or Vander Reed? Vander Reed. We've reached an agreement that is substantially similar to the agreement the council previously considered when they approved the lease agreement with the University of Incarnate Word. There's a few minor differences, but for the benefit of those who weren't here at the last meeting, I will walk through the major deal points in this lease agreement that provides for a 99-year lease to Franklin Pierce University. Before I get too far along, I would like to thank Linda Beals, our real estate coordinator, who was a great assistance in negotiating this lease, and also Jim Nichols, who spearheaded the effort on staff and in dealing with Franklin Pierce before he turned Raymond over to me to beat him up in a back room and get to this lease agreement. But anyway, it was a good negotiation. It was a pleasure to work with the Franklin Pierce people, and they really have an agreement that I think is to the benefit of both parties. But the basics for this lease agreement are, this is a 30-acre lease. It's to the city-owned parcel, the 100-acre piece just north of the 40 acres at Human Estrella. It'll be the northernmost part of that parcel. As you move north from our 40 acres, the first 30 acres is the University of Incarnate Word's 30-acre campus. Just north of that will be the acreage that Franklin Pierce will occupy. There's a 20-acre initial lease property with 10 acres that's called the reserve parcel that will initially be developed by Franklin Pierce University as a passive recreational area that will be open to the public, and that will be developed and maintained by the university. The lease calls out that there will be certain specific uses designated for the 30-acre piece of land, and that will be for educational purposes, and that is defined in the property in the lease. The term of the lease is 99 years. The first 50 years, the same as the UIW lease, will be leased for $1 a year. After that, the lease rate will increase to 15% of market value, and then that lease rate will increase by 5% every 10 years over the course of the lease. There are provisions in the lease that call for alternative rents. The campus is to be up and running within 7 years of the institution of the lease. If they have not become operational within that time period, at the 6th year, the rate will accelerate to 50% of market value. And then at the 7th year, if they haven't reached or become operational, it will accelerate to 100% of market value. There is a 2-year due diligence period. During that time, we'll both be doing our homework on the piece of land. The city will be providing environmental assessments, title reports, etc. Franklin Pierce will be doing site assessments and some pre-groundbreaking work to make sure that the site is in fact suitable for their occupation as a campus. During that time period, the city will also be zoning the property to an appropriate usage, and we'll be taking that zoning through the process along with our city center PAD. We agreed to do the same thing for UIW, so we'll take both of these pieces of property through the zoning process in conjunction with our zoning. There is a condition precedent on the piece of property that prior to the campus becoming operational, the city will provide a library. That is included in the UIW, and that is a condition precedent for the lease becoming effective. And we're certainly working towards that end as we speak. All improvements on the land will be owned by Franklin Pierce University. The city will review and approve all improvements, and the Franklin Pierce will provide an annual statement of what new improvements have been added to the land, so us as a lessor we do know what's going on the property and what improvements have been added to the property. There will be sublease provisions. Again, as a lessor of 30 acres, we do want to know if there are any subleases on the property. Generally, all subleases need to be of a use that's complementary to a campus of higher education. And vendor contracts are generally accepted. Those are contracts, i.e. for a campus bookstore or a cafeteria or a recreational site or some dorm housing management services. So we tried to address the fact that there will be other contractors or other subleases on the property as well. The city will generally be indemnified by Franklin Pierce for issues that arise on the campus. In negotiating this lease, as you'll probably recall with UIW, there was some concern about what would happen if the lease terminated and how would the lessee be made whole for any improvements they placed upon the property. Mirroring what we reached in the UIW lease, if there is a termination of this lease agreement, the city will pay up to 1/2 of the cost of the improvements that were actually installed upon the property if we take possession of that property back, up to a maximum of $5 million. That's the same provision we had in the UIW lease. The only real difference well, there's two main differences in this lease over the UIW lease. I would say the major difference is at the end of the lease term in this case, there is a right to purchase in Franklin Pierce's lease agreement. And that was present in the LOI that we entered into about a year ago. I think it was May. We're a little over a year. That was present in the LOI that we entered with Franklin Pierce. UIW, we didn't get on that road. That really wasn't in their business model. They're in the business, they say, of leasing. But in addressing the issue of what do we do at the end of 99 years, obviously universities are probably in the forever business as much as cities are. We need to address how to deal with this property. And in this case, there is an option right to re-enter negotiations for a lease, or there is a right to purchase on that 30 acres at the then market value. So we did address that in the lease, and that does depart from the UIW lease. There is resident employee discounts of 15% off of the standard tuition rates. That was present in the LOI, and that is present in the lease agreement. In this lease agreement, the second major difference from the UIW lease, owing to Franklin Pierce's concerns is being able to account for what that is actually going to be and to comply with accounting standards, we did put a cap on that of $400,000 for the first year. I think that's 125 students, I think is what we figured roughly, if you apply it just student for student. But that's only for full-time students. If you broke that up and applied it to part-time students, which it likely would be, that could equal quite a few more students when you apply that 15% discount. That will be adjusted on a yearly basis by CPI. So it starts at $400,000 a year as a cap, but it's going to go up each year. So we did include that provision in the lease agreement. There's joint use provisions. We anticipate in the future we'll enter into joint use agreements with Franklin Pierce for such uses as the library, future arts center, ballpark, parking, any other city amenities that are in the area that would be complementary to a campus. We just recognize that in the future we'll be having future joint use agreements. And the last provision that we had in the UIW lease as well is they've agreed to incorporate the City of Goodyear's name and our logo in their campus signage and their correspondence and letterheads. And those are the major provisions of the leasing agreement. Again, it's very similar to the agreement we entered with UIW. It's a very professional and a negotiation and a lease that should benefit both parties, and we hopefully provide Franklin Pierce every opportunity to be successful at that location. And with that, I'll answer any questions that you may have.
Would anyone like to speak for Franklin Pierce?
My name is Raymond Vanderriet. I'm Vice President for Strategic Initiatives at Franklin Pierce University, and as the previous citizen indicated, I'd like to congratulate the city, of course, on the award, the All-American City. We were very proud as a university to be part of the campaign, and we think we brought a lot to that, as did the city. And in partnership, I think we're stronger, as we will be with this lease. The Board of Trustees of Franklin Pierce University voted unanimously on Friday to adopt this lease as written and as I have just signed. And the board has asked me to convey their thanks for this wonderful opportunity, and is obviously very optimistic about the success of this project in the long term. And as I said to the board at the end, and they echoed my sentiments, this is a big day for our institution, and I suspect likewise for the city of Goodyear. We thank you for that opportunity.
Okay, thank you, Raymond. Any comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, ask the clerk to read resolution by title only, please.
Adopt Resolution 08-1237, approving and authorizing the mayor to execute a lease agreement with Franklin Pierce University for the development of a 4-year Institute of Higher Education campus within the City of Goodyear City Center, authorizing and directing the mayor to take all action and execute all documents necessary to carry out the lease and providing for an effective date.
Okay, thank you. Could I have a motion to approve the resolution?
I move that we adopt the resolution number 08-1237 as written, as read by the clerk.
Second.
Motion from Councilmember Cavalier and a second from Councilmember Holland. Open for discussion. We'll start with
And I just think it's
the
an
motion
exciting,
maker and second.
yeah, it's an exciting opportunity, so, thank you.
It's great. What more can we say? Looking forward to it.
A couple of questions. That the right to purchase is definitely a significant difference between the one that we did with UIW and the one that we're doing with Franklin Pierce.
Yes.
That will not occur or cannot occur until the end of the 99 years,
It's at the end of lease period.
which is the 99 years,
Yes.
correct? Okay, so it's not at, I mean, if both parties, anytime you enter into a contract, you always think about terminating it before you enter into it. So don't take this question as disrespectful towards the institution. But if both parties were to terminate the project 4 years, 5 years down the road, that doesn't give the leasee,
Let's see, yes.
the right to purchase the property at that juncture.
It's specified in the end of term.
I guess what I'm getting at
It
is,
says, well, it's in subsection 18D,
right?
and it's triggering the option to purchase upon the expiration date of this lease. So it wouldn't seem that an early expiration or an early termination would trigger that provision. And that's not what's intended.
That's understood by the institution as well, right? That 99.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, all discussions were the end of term. How do we handle the property at the end of term? And that's the same conversation we have with UIW. A 99-year lease. I'm not going to be around to worry about it too much, but
Neither one of us.
but you like to think about the future
Right.
generations and not drive their attorney and counsel crazy on how to deal with it. So yeah, on the one we had a right to propose or a right for extension that fit UIW's business model. Franklin Pierce, as it was discussed in the LOI a year ago, they wanted a right to purchase, and so we wrote that in. There's also the right to re-enter into another lease.
Okay. All right. I'm good.
Okay.
Welcome, thank you. We're just the envy of many cities across the valley, and I
Across the country now.
across the country now, absolutely across the country, and I can see people coming from the other side of the valley to these colleges and taking part in our city. So congratulations and welcome.
Welcome aboard. Just to follow on Councilmember Lord's comment, we had three things we presented on All-America City, and probably the most dominating one was our relationship with the
Absolutely.
colleges and bringing colleges to Goodyear. So thank you. And it's been a joy working with you and President Dr. Haggerty. So I suspect it'll continue that way. Okay. Ready for roll call vote?
Absolutely.
Councilmember Souza,
Aye.
Councilmember Cavalier,
Aye.
Councilmember Lord,
Aye.
Councilmember Holland,
Aye.
Councilmember Osborne,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Antoniak,
Aye.
Mayor Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Passed 7-0.
Okay, thank you. Next item is to consider the proposed, there's 6 city tax code changes and 2 transaction privilege tax changes. We'll start with a public hearing. After the public hearing, the council will adopt a resolution to make the documents a public record, or will be asked to. The council will then consider adoption of an ordinance which would adopt the amendments to the code. So, I'd like to start with the public hearing to consider the proposed model city tax code changes and transaction privilege tax changes for Goodyear. I'll open the public hearing and start with Terry Canada.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Can you hear me? I'm here tonight to discuss and review the proposed tax changes and staff recommendations for the City of Goodyear City Code tax changes. I'd like to start out the presentation by saying that I'm not a tax expert by any means at all, but I do have Larry Lang from Finance in the audience to help assist with the presentation, as well as Harry Paxton is here from Economic Development. So as we go through and you have any questions, one of 3 of us could possibly help you or get back with you on your specific questions that you have. trying to move PowerPoint forward. Is there a marks up here?
Just hit the page down key.
Okay. Is that going?
Okay.
That's what I said,
Well, we'll
isn't it?
just go ahead and go through with your presentation.
It's a keyboard.
This keyboard's not moving.
The keyboard's not working.
Where's Eddie?
They're on their way.
Excuse me?
They're coming.
They're coming?
Fix your press. Yeah, I think so. It's working now?
Thank you. Yeah, tonight I only have 5 or 6 slides, but they're important. I'm going to go through a little bit of the background of how the tax code is actually. Okay. Back in the 80s, there were some concerns about how the tax code between the cities were being, it's basically the definitions and the varying interpretations of the tax code. And so a group of concerned citizens sponsored by the Arizona League of Cities and Towns got together and formed what was known as the Model City Tax Code Commission. And that commission still stands today, and it's actually comprised of a number of representatives from many cities and towns. And I believe Georgia is our representative here for the city of Goodyear. And what they did was they got together back then, and the idea was to standardize the taxing definitions between all of the municipalities so that the folks that were paying the sales tax or retail establishments that were being part of that program would have standardized definitions and were able to interpret the taxing authorities of the cities across the state. We continue again to participate in that program, and there's 2 types of changes that I'm going to discuss today. The first set of changes are brought about through that tax code commission, and they're administrative in nature, and I will talk about broad level what they are. The commission actually got together in February this year, perhaps Georgia were a part of this, and brought forward some initiatives to just basically standardize the definitions and the terms in the tax code. And what we're proposing tonight is to approve that so that we're in conformance with the Model City Tax Code from the city of Goodyear, and it also is having all of the cities be in conformance with the Arizona revised statutes. That was the intent of these administrative changes. For both of the types of tax code changes that we're discussing tonight, there were legal requirements. The requirement to advertise in the paper of general circulation, again, because we're having a public hearing and proposing a tax rate change, was done on May 20th and also May 27th. And then tonight we're holding the public hearing. Briefly, just to talk about the administrative changes in nature through the Model City Tax Code. It is affecting all cities. Everybody is putting this on their agenda. There are a number of changes here. I won't go through all of them. Again, if you have questions, I'd be happy to either try and entertain them tonight or get back with you. A lot of them are basically for the definitions. You do have a copy of the tax code with the red line changes that was part of your packet. And then moving ahead to the second type of tax code change that we're talking about tonight, these are actually changes being brought forward that will change the tax rate for the city of Goodyear. And so let me talk a little bit about the first one is the tax on the transient lodging rate. This tax is actually, it's composed of 2 components. We're talking about the transient lodging rate here, which is currently 2.5%. The information that you have in front of you, all of the text was reading 1% increase, which would bring it from 2.5 to 3.5. Over the course, I guess, of the last couple weeks, There were discussions with, I think, Brian and the city manager with the hotel owners group. And as a result of those conversations, staff is recommending that we institute a 0.05% increase, which would bring it from 2.5 to 3%. A couple of things I'd like to talk about regarding that. We did calculations, and based on, it's an estimate of about 700 new rooms that
0.5.
0.5%.
Clarify that for the audience, because I think that's a typo in there.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off in the middle of your
It is
presentation. but
2.5 to 3%.
If people are listening, they're not going to follow you if they're watching this.
Yes, 2.5 to 3%. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Based on the discussions again with the hotel owners group, we went ahead and we calculated what our current revenue is for that tax, and we estimate that we can generate the $100,000 that was discussed at the council advance, and what that was related to directly was the spring training expense. And so again, after those conversations, we're recommending the 0.5 increase. The second point that I want to make and bring up was that, again, based on the conversations with the hotel owners group, that the recommended rate increase of the 0.5%, it actually allows the hotels to remain competitive with the neighboring jurisdictions, and it was important for them to be competitive in the corporate rate structure. And as they're doing that, I guess a number of people, when they call around and they're trying to get block group rates, would look at a total inclusive cost, and so at that rate, it allows us to be competitive. The second one I want to go ahead and talk about is we have a specialized tax incentive, if you will, for general single purchases over $5,000. And what we're recommending here is that we increase, or actually what it does is it just eliminates that tax break, and so all the purchases, retail purchases in the city would be at the same rate of 2%, and it moves that from 1.2 to 2%. A couple things. These taxes were proposed to be effective January 9th, which is in the calendar year, which is administratively easier to collect because that's the taxpayer year normally as far as tax collections go. The prior changes are being proposed effective July 1, as with all the other cities and towns in Arizona. Okay, so where do we stand for City of Goodyear? This chart simply is a comparative analysis of the tax rates for some of the neighboring jurisdictions. Again, we've went ahead and put in for the transient lodging tax with the hotel motel. It's a combined tax rate. For a comparative analysis here, you can see at the 5% recommended rate, we're right pretty comparable with the neighboring cities. Avondale and Tolleson being in there. And then on the single tax or single purchase over $5,000, again, we're recommending 2%, and as you can see, that's comparative with the other neighboring cities also. And so what council action we're requesting tonight is that we hold the public hearing, and then there is an adoption ratifying the ordinance for public record, and then the adoption of the ordinance to reflect any changes to the city tax code.
Okay, thank you. We are right now within the public hearing, and do we have any comments from the public?
Mayor Kavanaugh, Dan Grubb would like to speak.
Okay.
Hi, Mayor, City Council.
Hello.
Appreciate the opportunity to address you this evening. I'm Dan Grubb of Pioneer Ford, just down the street. As you know, we're part of the community and support the efforts of Goodyear to encourage business from both residents and non-residents. This increase from 1.2 to 2% will have an adverse effect on our business. certainly it affects us at this 5,000 and over range. It's no secret, any of you watching, listening to the press, our business is tough right now. There's a question of how long business is going to be the way it is. It's tough to say the least. I think by enacting this and increase, you'll be sending the message to do business in Avondale, Glendale, Peoria, and Phoenix. And I think that's the wrong message to send. Our partner stores, which we're involved in, I have several partners who are in business in Avondale, have customers regularly that call from Goodyear, identify themselves as from Goodyear, and believe it or not, check the tax rate of what they're paying from municipality to municipality, city to city. I think when they do this checking, and granted the matrix it shows, it does put and would put Goodyear in a situation of being in one of the top, if not the top, the second spot in highest taxes. I would urge you to consider promoting the fact that Goodyear is customer friendly and that it has a lower sales tax, which will attract more business and not chase away the business today that we have. I would urge you to look for a long-term solution, not a short-term fix. We're all facing tough times these days. You are, we are, and by raising taxes, I just think is sending the wrong message and makes it a harder struggle for us. And we have a business going in next door to us, and Yates on the corner. So that's it in a nutshell. I just ask you to really reconsider this and give it some thought as to maybe stepping out, going a different direction as opposed to following the other cities. What maybe good can come out of this and promoting from a citywide promotion as far as that there's other reasons to buy here. And that would be a benefit to all of us. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Further comment from the public? No, none of them. Okay, then we have two resolutions here. First one is on actually changes to the city code, the definitions within the city code on taxes. And the second one is on the transaction privilege tax. Is that correct? Am I correct? Yes. Okay, so I'd ask the clerk to read the resolution by title only for the first resolution. Have you closed?
You need to close the public hearing first.
Oh, close it. That's correct. We have no one here from the hotel who wants to speak. Yeah, I'll close the public hearing. Okay, I'll thank you, Councilmember Cavalier, for that. No problem. Ask the clerk to read the resolution by title only, please.
Adopt Resolution 08-1239 declaring as a public record that certain document filed with the city clerk and entitled the 2008 Amendments to the Tax Code of the City of Goodyear.
Okay, could I have a motion on that resolution, please?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion, Councilmember Lord, and second from Councilmember Cavalier. It's now
I second it.
okay from Vice Mayor Antoniak. The second was Vice Mayor Antoniak. Open for discussion. Right over
We
here.
need to do a roll call vote.
Oh, we got to discuss it.
We're going to discuss it.
Oh, sorry.
I'm having trouble too,
Sorry.
so don't worry about it.
Oh, my.
3 weeks off.
Don't, it's just something we need to do to be in compliance
Okay.
with the other cities, so it's a pretty easy vote here.
Yeah, I just want to be clear. The first resolution is the compliance for the model, the tax code issues, right? Doesn't change the rates. The second one changes the rates?
Second one does. It's the
Yes, the
transaction
second one
privilege
does.
tax. It's the second resolution.
Are we
This
discussing?
is just for
This does not,
tax commission code compliance.
no hotel, no transaction. I just want to be
All we're
clear.
talking about is A.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the first resolution is just declaring it a public record. And so it really affects nothing except for allows us not to have to publish the whole thing. So
Got it.
all you're doing is declaring a public record.
Okay.
Okay. Comments on the right? None. Okay. Could I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Cavalier?
Aye.
Councilmember Lord?
Aye?
Councilmember Holland?
Aye?
Councilmember Osborne?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Antoniak?
I got to ask a clarifying question. Roy, sorry. If we change or amend the next ordinance, it's not going to change or amend declaring a public record, correct?
No.
No, okay. Aye.
Councilmember Souza,
Aye.
Mayor Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Pass 7-0.
Okay, now we'll move to transaction privilege tax, and that's the, we're talking tonight about the hotel tax and the increase of the tax by 0.8% for items in excess of $5,000. In anticipation of discussion and changes to the transaction privilege tax, it's important that I explain that we'll make a motion to adopt the ordinance as it is currently written, and if changes are desired, a motion to amend that ordinance may be made. So I'd ask the clerk to read ordinance 081115 by title only, please.
Adopt ordinance 08-1115 relating to the privilege license tax, adopting the 2008 amendments to the tax code of the City of Goodyear by reference, establishing an effective date, providing for severability, providing penalties for violations, and providing for applications of tax to certain contracts.
Okay, could I have a motion, please?
Nobody's excited about this one?
No, we want to make sure we know what we're saying.
We can always say no to the motion. No one
If you don't
wishes-
make a motion, it does.
That's correct.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, the administrative changes from the Model City Sales Tax Commission have not been adopted in your actions, and we do absolutely need that action, regardless of action on the other items. We need that action from you to be consistent with the other cities. Okay. We can help you on wording if you want to separate those motions into three motions.
Oh, we've
I thought
got the ordinances read by the clerk, which y'all packaged all three issues together.
Right.
Correct.
So we've got to make a motion. I'll make a motion to adopt the ordinance as read by the clerk, assuming we're going to make some amendments. I'm not going to. So I'll move that we adopt the ordinance as read by the clerk.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Vice Mayor Antoniak and a second from Councilmember Lord. Excuse me. Okay, we'll start with the Vice Mayor.
I have a feeling there's not a lot of fans here, and I asked the question. I want to be clear in my position. I asked the question to the manager today. We have not budgeted for these dollars, so these dollars are not in the budget. Staff has not assumed that these dollars are coming forward. Mr. Grubb took the words out of my mouth, and I hadn't even talked to him since we made the development deal with him 5 years ago, I think, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. I'm not, at this juncture, favoring these changes in the tax code. I think we need to wait 6, 9, 12 months and see what happens. We're going to double the number of beds in town in terms of hotel over the next, I don't know how many, couple of years, so we're going to increase the tax revenue on the bed tax. But I just think, given the economic conditions, just like Mr. Grubb had said, we need to encourage folks to come in and spend more than $5,000 in town and not discourage them from doing so. I wasn't a big fan of it when the idea came up during our work session about this issue. I'm not a big fan of it now. And I would like to see us get past November and see what changes in terms of the state of the economy and how our baseball is operating, and still have the door open to be able to do this in the next fiscal year. But this fiscal year, I'm just not open to it. So I'll let the discussion go on, Mayor, but I'll maybe reserve the right to come back to me and amend my own motion when the time comes.
Okay. Councilmember Lord.
In the beginning, when this was suggested, I must say, I said, yeah, that's okay. I was sort of thought, well, we could do that. But since then, time has really changed out there, and people are having more of a difficult time, and that concerns me. And I really don't have numbers of occupancy rate that's in the last 6 months. So, and when I questioned, okay, who stays at the hotels right now? And the information that I received was that, first of all, Goodyear doesn't have a lot of entertainment. So we don't have people coming and staying and playing. What we do have is corporate people coming and staying. And I think about Cancer Treatments of America, I think about our colleges and the different people that are coming in. And it's not that I don't think eventually this will be changed, Mr. Grubb, that I can see it sometime along the way that we will make this increase, but I'm feeling maybe the time is not right. And so I probably would not vote for this tonight.
Okay. Councilmember Holland.
I'm assuming that this was brought up in anticipation of things to come, and we're just trying to get ourselves ready for this new tax increase, and so we're trying to put everything in place. But I'm uncomfortable with it, and I guess one of the questions might be, where did the figures come from? When you do the sales tax comparison and you see the differences in the city, it does look like we've kind of taken ourselves up pretty high on the hotel motel rates, and also on the single purchases over 5,000. And maybe the staff could help us understand where some of those figures came from.
Mayor Kavanaugh, Councilmember Holland, you're referring to the sales tax comparison chart?
Yes.
The actual model city sales tax code gives a listing of all cities and their tax rates, and that is actually available online at the League of Arizona Cities webpage. And what it shows in these two situations, and it's just these two situations that we're showing you tonight, the two provisions. What it shows is that the existing tax code, the combined rates as listed, exist. That's the rates that are today for the hotel motel. Avondale's 4.5%, Glendale 5.6%, and so forth.
I probably just didn't make myself clear with my question, but I guess what I'm really trying to say is the proposed tax increase for Goodyear, where did those particular figures come from?
Okay, the hotel motel tax was talked about, as you recall, in preparation for the council advance, and in the advance, that we had set aside $1.5 million for spring training for the second team.
I know.
And those costs came up to $1.6 million, and the question was asked of staff coming into the advance, how do we bridge that gap? And the suggestion was made to use a hotel motel tax for that 1% differential to bridge that $100,000 gap. The calculation originally on that was that could be done with a 1% sales tax. As Terry Canada mentioned earlier in her presentation, that number plus the information brought to us by the industry that the number of rooms are increasing significantly by 700 over the next couple of years allowed us to reduce that number, and that's where staff recommendation came from. The second issue is a policy question before you, and that is that not all cities have a different tax rate for those purchases in excess of, in our case, $5,000. Many of the cities on this list, as a matter of fact, do not have that. They have just one rate that is the same for large purchases as it is for the smaller purchases.
Okay, so the title at the top, when it says purchases over 5,000, may not have, some of them would stay the same. They don't have an additional tax. It's just the way that column was hit.
Okay. A transaction in Glendale, a $4,000 transaction in Glendale is taxed at 2.2%. A $6,000 transaction in Glendale is also taxed at 2.2%. In Goodyear, a $4,000 transaction is taxed at 2%, and then the $6,000 transaction is taxed at 2% for the first $5,000 and then 1.2% after that level. That's the difference between those two. So the rate that Glendale has, I use Glendale as an example. I didn't look up to tell you for sure, but many of the cities that is the case. They don't have this exception in the code. Okay? If you look in the wording in the code, this one, I believe, is covered in Section 5, Section 460. There is a paragraph that is being removed. Paragraph D would be removing it for this particular provision, and it is actually, if you printed it out in color, it is actually shown in red, crossed out. That paragraph D replaced with a new paragraph D that says reserved. Many of those cities actually have reserved in there, which means they tax those purchases, larger dollar purchases, at the same rate that they tax the smaller dollar. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, Councilmember Osborne.
I'll start out with the hotel issue. Actually, after hearing Ms. Ward and Mr. Antoniak's thoughts, I came with another thought that I can kind of tell that you are thinking maybe in the future we relook at it. But I was going to propose that we go with the 0.5% increase, but it wouldn't go into effect until 2010. But if we want to just wait, that's everybody else's thought, but I was going to at least put that on the table if you guys were thinking that. That was my only consideration on that. As for the 5,000 above, just for the record, I did get legal counsel to make sure I was allowed to discuss this because I was concerned. Just for history, we came to this city in our business in '96 and knew that in the '90s, at some point, that anything from $2,500 and above got that special tax. That was very nice for our customers. And I know that historically that reduction in percent of tax was given to attract other car dealerships. But indirectly, it also helped other Goodyear businesses. It helped my business. It helped furniture stores. It helped major appliance or electronic stores. Other people did see the benefit for their customers. Okay. Then a couple years ago, it was changed to the 5,000 above. Well, I think that took a few more of my sales away, and I'm sure it took some of the furniture. I shouldn't say away. It took that benefit away from the customers that came to Goodyear businesses. We use a lot of tools. Economic development uses a lot of tools to attract new businesses to Goodyear. We don't have as many tools to retain our businesses here. And you heard from Mr. Grubb, and I'm sure that Mr. Yates has the same feeling that anything above and beyond, 5,000 is one thing. You know what? I would be happy to change it to 15,000 and above. That doesn't bother me. But I would like to help our customers, our citizens that need to purchase larger end items right now in this economic time. Maybe we don't change it yet, or maybe we change it again. We went from 2,500 to 5,000. Maybe there's another amount that we change it to. That's just my thought.
Okay. Councilmember Cavalier.
Yeah, the only concern I have, I do have a concern for the single purchase over 5,000. We're having difficulty bringing car dealerships into our city as it is, and they do check things like this. The customers, I think, check to make certain that these taxes, I do, when I buy a car, I want to see what those taxes are, and I noticed that there are certain things with buying a used car as opposed to a new car in some dealerships, and so I'm looking at those kinds of things and what the tax rates are, and that does affect my buying. So I really don't want to bother changing I would vote against changing anything on the retail single purchases over 5,000. On the hotel tax, I'm not so sure. 5% puts us right in the middle, and because of the economic development that Goodyear has been working toward and with what has been brought to the city of Goodyear, I feel that the hotels are going to benefit from it. And if it's going to cost us, and we need this money, this extra 0.5%, to add to this to help bring these new economic engines to Goodyear, entertainment, etc., then I don't feel so badly about raising the 0.5% on hotels. I'd like to give it more thought, but at this point, I definitely am against the 5,000 for large purchases.
In other words, you'd like to leave it the way it is?
Yes.
Yep, okay. Councilmember Holland?
Well, Larry, can I talk with you? Can I address you again? You know, I got to go back to something that just kind of keeps bothering me about this tax over $5,000, and this is kind of what I was alluding to before, because I see that it went from 1.2 to 2% increase, and I guess what kind of bothers me is, did we really, was that the number that's going to assure us the difference in the money that we need to keep the city running in the ballpark and everything? Or why didn't we just take it to 1.5 or 1.8? And I guess that's really kind of what's bothering me. It seems like it went up to 2%, and I'm not quite sure I understand where that number came from.
Okay, Mayor Kavanaugh, Councilmember Holland, the proposal to change this is really asking the City Council on the tax policy question of providing that discounted tax rate for those larger purchases. That was established in the mid-1990s to attract car dealerships.
Right.
And obviously a lot of those car dealerships went to another community that had a higher rate. And it's just, that's the simple policy question before this group is based upon that dialogue. Do you want to continue providing that credit? So our sales tax rate, our regular retail sales tax rate is 2%. By removing the credit, that makes the sales tax rate for those purchases 2%, regardless of the amount, whether it's $100 or $30,000, it's a 2% rate. So that's why it's crafted in the way that it is.
Okay.
In defense of staff, I feel somewhat uneasy about this, because we did discuss this at the work session, and we did all give you the like, and then between that time and now, we're all kind of faltering on this. But I keep hearing reports and reading things that aren't good. You know, the economic status of our country's not there yet. And so I'm concerned. I just want to thank staff, though, for all the hard work they've done on this. But
Councilmember Souza?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had my car serviced at Scrubs Ford dealership Friday, and I had an occasion to go over some of the sales figures of these folks throughout the valley, really. It was a spreadsheet of every dealership throughout the valley. And frankly, this industry is really suffering at this particular time. Not only from a standpoint of sales, but from a standpoint of economics. From the fact that gasoline prices are going up, and people that bought SUVs and larger size cars now are trying to trade those cars in to get lower fuel efficient models, and they can't do it. They take a real hit from a trade-in standpoint. So the dealerships find themselves between a rock and a hard place. And I got to sympathize with Grubbs on this issue. And yeah, we discussed this. You're absolutely right. And to maybe take a step back and say, maybe there's needs to be some further consideration here. Rather than jump into this thing, let's reevaluate the path that we're following and what it is going to do to an industry. We only have 2 dealerships in town. And frankly, if we increase the factors that are going to increase sales tax for their products, then that puts them at a disadvantage with the dealerships in Peoria, in Avondale, in Glendale, and the like. And the 2 against the masses. So I think if we pursue this path, we are not being fair with the 2 dealerships that we have in town at the present time. So I would say that maybe we ought to put the reins on this thing for the time being, in all deference to staff.
What about the small businesses too?
Pardon?
How do you feel about the small businesses, like the jewelry shops and the...
Well, here again, it's tough times for all sales. People are having a, you know, I've been looking for a check from the feds
Yeah, I did
for a long time. I haven't gotten it yet. But I think a lot of people have anticipate that. And I don't see any relevance to the rebates that the people are getting, that they're using these the way the administration felt that it should be used. And I think people are basically banking the money. And of course they're buying big ticket items too. They're buying the big TVs and
Well, they're being forced to buy new TVs.
Yeah.
They're being forced to buy new TVs.
well, true.
They have
But,
any choices
they're not
now.
being forced. I mean, they can get the the unit that converts without too much damage to them. But
It's expensive too.
I don't know. It's
Let me just comment, if I could, the background on these. The 1% sales tax increase for motels, which would be paid by people visiting us, was derived because we had a $100,000 differential between what we expected to have on hand and what the reds were going to cost us on an annual basis. So there was a value in that thing, and that it was an intellectual, conscious decision that's how we derived that shortfall. And the other one, just so I don't know where that came. I assume it came up because we have a shortfall overall in revenue within the city, and that was one way to generate revenue for a tax, which is certainly arguable. Councilmember Osborne.
I just wanted to state that if this is, this goes away, that we vote against it. I really think that our citizens need to be educated more, though, that the city of Goodyear does offer that difference of shopping locally than shopping outwardly. Because, I hate to say it, many of my customers don't know it exists. And they're happy to know it, but the most I do hear is the fact that everybody thinks the city of Goodyear has the highest sales tax around. So I will tell you that. But granted, education.
Well, for food and beverage, it does have the highest.
That's just
In fact, no one's close. I want to talk about protecting our people. That's if we need to be reducing a tax that
Well, but
they all pay.
Maybe we need to be having a collective conversation then about a different number overall. In the sense of if we're going to increase the 5,000, maybe the next time we have this discussion, we ought to be talking about equalizing out the entire tax rate such that it brings a benefit to somebody that's paying less than 5,000 for an item. So let's have a conversation about 1.8, so that way the person at the grocery store is getting hit 1.8, which is a little bit less, because that's the complaint every one of us hears up here all the time, is that they'll go to another city and shop groceries somewhere else because they benefit from a different tax rate. So let's have a conversation holistically about the tax rates the next time we have this conversation.
I agree with that. That's-
Assuming we do.
Yeah.
'Cause I know we all hear that. We just expressed the frustration about it, and I know we all hear it. So.
Well, you cannot buy a new car, and you cannot buy a piece of jewelry, but you have to go buy your food.
That's right.
You just have to.
But I mean, you know,
Yeah,
let's
I won't
balance.
go
Yeah.
Well,
I don't mind luxury.
I want to go back to, I couldn't understand why the number was at 2.0 when it could have been less than that and still been something that maybe our
But it didn't encompass
used
store.
car people or our salesmen or furniture stores could handle. And so it must be some reason why this particular number, and I thought it was supporting that differential, because we have this shortfall that we need to fill. So,
For the bed tax, that's what it's for.
For bed tax.
But the going from 1.2 to
I'm
2.
talking about the.
She's talking about the retail.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
That's not to satisfy a differential for the reds.
Okay. Well, I guess I didn't understand that.
It wasn't intended for that. Vice Mayor?
Rourke, if we're to strike the tax issues we're talking about on this, would I just strike section 5 and 6 of the ordinance as it was read?
You probably, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I was looking at that. I think the best thing would be, yes, to strike the proposed changes to section 5D. So let's be clear that 5D will remain as.
Oh, I was looking at the language of the ordinance.
Yeah, and in section 6, you'll strike the proposed changes to section 8A-447.
Speak a little bit louder into the mic, sorry, I didn't hear you. Sections 5?
Yeah, you're going to want to strike the proposed changes to section 5, which is amending 8A-460D, so you want 460D to remain in effect.
Okay.
And then in section 6, which is the proposed amendment to 8A-447, you're going to want to delete the proposed amendment, so that section remains in effect as currently written. I think that'll do.
All right, then I'd offer up an amendment to my motion to strike section 5A 460.D as described by the attorney in section 6 regarding the proposed amendments.
Yeah, the proposed changes.
The proposed changes to the tax code, thank you. I'd offer that up as amendment to my original motion.
Okay, we have
A second.
a motion amending the original motion, and it's been seconded by Councilmember Holland. Okay, so what we're doing is, by this motion, basically, we're leaving intact the transaction privilege tax provisions that exist today in the city of Goodyear.
That's correct.
One remark.
Yes.
Just to belabor the point a little bit, I do know we talked about this, and the mayor alluded to that. We talked about making up the 100,000 gap in terms of the REDS back when we had the discussion, we adopted the REDS, but even at that juncture, I think myself and even yourself, Mayor, and others expressed wanting to hear from industry about it and wanting to hear different perspectives on it. And I garnered that perspective over the last couple of weeks, and I know they came in the room a little bit tardy, but we had the conversation with our major hotelier here in town, and I'm open to this discussion a year from now again, as well as the transaction privilege tax a year from now again. But let's have that more holistic discussion. That's really the vantage point I'm coming from on this issue.
But I'd like a little more information on occupancy rate and
I just think overall we need more information
yeah.
when we have that discussion again. Assuming my amendment to my motion.
We have a motion and we have a second. Comments on the motion? Discussion? Okay, we need a roll call vote.
Vote on the amendment first.
The amendment's a voice
You've got an
vote.
amendment.
Oh, that's right.
Just all, you don't have to have a...
I don't have a roll call
No, just voice
necessity
vote.
on the amendment. Okay, all those in favor of the amendment to the primary motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now we'll go, any comments on the amended motion? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Lord?
I don't want to vote on this. Is this the tax code? What am I voting
Yes.
on? Aye.
Councilmember Holland?
Aye.
Councilmember Osborne?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Antoniak?
Aye.
Councilmember Souza?
Aye.
Councilmember Cavalier?
Aye.
Mayor Kavanaugh?
Aye.
Passed 7-0.
Okay, we'll now move to ordinance, consider adoption of an ordinance to rezone 160 acres known as Sundias Farms, and Steve Creccia will present.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. This is a final PAD for a project known as Sundias Farms. With this project, we're looking at 160 acres, zone preliminary PAD, which was approved by the council back in September of 2006. Surrounding this 160 acres, we have existing subdivisions to the north, to the west. We have Estrella Vista, Cerebral Village. To the east, we have Wood Corporate Campus, Cincinnati Reds. To the south, we have a mix of some commercial and industrial uses. And this is Estrella Parkway along the east boundary, and this is Elwood Street along the south, and this is Lower Buckeye Road, which is only improved along this section here. It stops and does not continue through into Saraville Village. This is a request for final PAD, the second step in our rezoning process. What the applicant is requesting is 3 residential parcels, 90 acres total. We have 4 to 6 dwelling units here, 2 to 4 for these 2 parcels, which would be adjacent to similar densities along here in Saraville Village. 18 acres for neighborhood commercial, which would be comparable to our C2, 10 acres for office, 41 acres for business parks, which as described in the PAD is a mix of generally light industrial and some retail C2 type uses. Staff has reviewed this final PAD. We do find it is consistent with the approved preliminary PAD, is consistent with our general plan, and is compatible with the surrounding area. With that, Mr. Mayor, staff and the commission do recommend approval of this final PAD. Staff is available for any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from the applicant?
Mayor, members of the council, Ed Bull, 702 East Osborne. We appreciate the recommendation. We accept the 51 stipulations. If you need a presentation, we'll be happy to give it. If you don't, I'll be happy to sit down. I turn to you to whether I should go into more detail, but as staff indicated, this is absolutely in accordance with the preliminary PAD that your council previously approved.
Okay, thank you. Further comments from the public? Seeing none, ask the clerk to read the ordinance by title only, please.
Adopt Ordinance 08-1116, providing for the conditional rezoning of 160 acres of property from the preliminary planned area development zoning district to the final planned area development zoning district for a project known as Sundias Farms, located at the southwest corner of Estrella Parkway and Lower Buckeye Road, adopting supplementary zoning map number 06-026 to provide for the change in zoning, providing separability, and providing for an effective date.
Could I have a motion, please?
So moved. It's read by the clerk.
Second. I have a motion from Councilmember Holland, a second from Vice Mayor Antoniak. It's open for discussion. Councilmember Cavalier.
Yeah, I just want to say this is I think this will work out very well with the neighborhood because we've had some discussion from the Estrella Vista and the area behind that. I don't know quite what the name of that development is, but they're concerned about this because they were afraid this was all going to be industrial, and now that that's turned into mixed use, which is great. This follows along with where I was last week in studying the city centers and what makes a neighborhood lively and what keeps a neighborhood alive and sustainable. And that kind of thing you have integrated almost entirely in this PAD. The thing that I'd like to see more is from your commercial development, and that's later on, but in that commercial section where you could have more of a city alive with things places people could go and they can bicycle to and walk to from all those neighborhoods, so that we don't drive our cars as much anymore. So making this a commercial area, more than just a commercial area, a meeting place for citizens, so that you have some open space within that commercial area where people meet, and a lot of little stores and restaurants or whatever. But I think this is close to meeting those kinds of needs, and I think it's you've resolved this into a very good PAD that with enough mixed use that will be very vibrant for that neighborhood. And I appreciate you doing that, because I've been holding my breath about this. I've had a lot of calls. What are you going to do with this? What are you going to let the developers do? This is, well, at the time we assumed it was set up for industrial, and I could say, well, that's what it's set up for, and heavy commercial. So doing this really changes all that, and I'm very much in favor of what you've done here. So it's a very good PAD. Just do something with that commercial that makes it a very livable community. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
just want to state, I remember this case from my P&Z days, and I'd just like to congratulate the developer because they did their due diligence in reaching out to the community and talking to those citizens and getting them involved, and that was good, and I really appreciate that, so thank you.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Holland?
Aye.
Councilmember Osborne?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Antoniak?
Aye.
Councilmember Souza?
Aye.
Councilmember Cavalier?
Aye.
Councilmember Lord?
Aye.
Mayor Kavanaugh?
Aye.
Passed 7-0.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, if I just might remark that the family that was the original landholder in here, thank you. I think this goes back to our days on the general plan, and they've sat through this process for almost 6-7 years. So thank you for your patience and during the fluctuation around your property.
Okay, we'll now move to a report of the city's evaluation team regarding Performing Arts Center proposal, and the recommendation is that the council reject the proposal submitted by Civica. And Brett Birmingham will present.
Thank you. Mayor Kavanaugh, members of the council.
Hold on a minute, please.
Just a minute. I will have to recuse myself because of the conflict of interest. Thank you.
Okay, Brett.
Mayor Kavanaugh, members of the council, I'm going to provide a brief background on the procurement, and I will also then, I want to introduce some of the evaluation team members to you today. We will then have a short presentation of some of the deficiencies from one of the evaluation team members. In way of background, you may recall in September of 2007, the city issued a request for qualifications describing the expectations for a performing arts center, a developer, and the developer selection process. It was the city's intention at that time to enter into an agreement with a master developer to partner with the city and to provide a performing arts center for public use without financing contributions or risk to the city of Goodyear. And it was intended that such a development would provide the city with a facility that could support various cultural opportunities and benefit our city and residents and visitors to the city of Goodyear. The only application that was received for that request for qualifications was from Civica Traub development team. The application was evaluated, and the Civica Traub team was invited to submit a proposal through the request for proposal process. And the original due date for that proposal was February 7th, 2008, but upon request by Civica Development and Sunburst Productions, the deadline was extended to April 30th. And then the second extension was requested, and one final extension to May 7th was granted. So on May 7th, the proposal was received from Civica Development and Sunburst, and the city's evaluation team has reviewed that proposal that was submitted, and they've provided a recommendation on how to proceed. They've also provided a summary of their findings of their review. And at this time, I want to introduce some of the evaluation staff to give you some background on some of the individuals who were working on that. The evaluation team consisted of staff and also outside experts, and it included 4 individuals who do not work for the city of Goodyear. And I'd like to point those out quickly. We have David Lemke. David, if you could raise your hand. David Lemke is a project architect with HDR Architecture. He is based out of the Omaha, Nebraska office, and he is an architect that focuses on performing arts centers, civic buildings, and commercial facilities, and he has designed several performing arts buildings. Next we have Mike Brenchley. Mike, if you could raise your hand, sitting next to David. Mike Brenchley is an architect with HDR Architecture. He is located in the Dallas, Texas office. And Mike's expertise includes advising governmental clients on procurement options. He's also an expert in assisting with the development and evaluation of public-private partnerships. So we utilized Mike to help us write the RFQs and the RFPs, the requests for qualifications and the requests for proposals. Next, we have 2 volunteers who were gracious enough to give of their time, their personal and professional time, to be on the evaluation team. We have Bill Oakland. Bill, if you could raise your hand. Bill is the president of the Southwest Division of Oakland Construction. Bill managed the construction for the Tempe Center for the Arts. He is also in the process of working as a general contractor for the Cancer Treatment Center of America building in the city of Goodyear. And then last but not least, we have Jody Ulick, sitting next to Bill. Right now, Jody is the president of the Arts Council of Fort Worth, Texas. And Jody is the former Cultural Services Director for the City of Tempe. Jody oversaw and directed all the activities regarding the Tempe Center for the Arts. And in the year 2000, Jody was the project manager for the development, for the planning, the construction, and the operations of the Tempe Center for the Arts. And prior to Jody's work with the City of Tempe, she was the Assistant Director of the Phoenix Arts Commission. So we first wanted to acknowledge Bill and Jody and thank them for their volunteering to give us of their time and their talents to the City of Goodyear. And at this time, we would like to invite Jody to come up and provide a summary of the findings from the evaluation team. So I'd like to turn the time over to Jody.
Thank you, Brett.
Hi.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. It was a great privilege, and I do want to thank staff for inviting me, and I'm sure I speak for Bill as well. It was really a wonderful experience to come and help out on this. We did do this. I actually had many conversations with Brett before I left the City of Tempe, and as he said, I was essentially the project manager of the Tempe Center for the Arts from the very beginning. So as we started out, even just in the early phases of feasibility study, through choosing the architecture team, on into the project manager, through the entire design and in construction. And then as we were finishing construction, I did set up all of the operations of the facility, and then I left town. It was a sad thing to leave, but at the same time, it was well set up, and they are running along very well. We did kind of Bill was on the team and the other members in terms of looking at this RFQ. And as you see in the packet that you were given, we did see a number of deficiencies in the RFQ and the RFP. Essentially, what we had to evaluate was what was exactly in there. A couple of the highlights of it, which are in your packets, there were questions in terms of the development and the design team, in terms of who was actually on that team. We did not have letters of commitment, and we also didn't see evidence of a number of the team members who were listed as being on that team. There were also a lot of questions in terms of the financial pro forma, both in the capital and in operations. So we had a lot of questions that actually were not answered in terms of the actual RFP. So as we were going through there were a number of things. I know that Bill could probably talk more about the actual construction and the building, but essentially in terms of evaluating it, they answered the questions, but they did not thoroughly answer the questions in terms of giving us the information that we needed to really forward this on to you. So because of those deficiencies, we are recommending that this RFP be rejected. Happy to answer questions. I know Bill is here as well, and if we can help you out, happy to do that.
You're recommending reject the proposal, not the RFP, right?
Rejecting the answer to the RFP.
Yeah.
Correct.
Did you have anyone else, Brett, that you wanted to speak? Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
If I could just add, should the council agree with this? should the council agree with this recommendation, I intend to bring back to the council during August, after your break, a recommended process to establish getting a master developer involved that will construct a performing arts center for the city. So it is not rejecting the proposals. I mean, it's rejecting the proposal. It's not rejecting the concept.
Okay, thank you. Anyone from the applicant like to speak, the proposer? Anyone from the public wish to speak? Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, so then the recommendation is here that we reject the proposal submitted by Civica. Ask for a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Cavalier and a second from Councilmember Lord. Open for discussion.
Councilmember Sousa. Sorry, you said Cavalier, Mayor.
I'm sorry.
Just want to be clear.
I'm sure that makes you proud, though, Dick.
You want to take it all back?
Did you want to say anything?
No.
Okay. Councilmember Lord?
I think we're all disappointed, and I am sure the public's going to be disappointed, because I think everybody I bump into, I'm sure you've all had the same, people want that performing arts center. So we look forward to another proposal coming forth, and I'm sorry that there were so many deficiencies that this could not go to fruition, but we'll charge on.
No, I'm in support of the motion as it was made.
Ma'am, did you have any qualms with the RFP itself? Did you think it was a fair RFP?
Yes, I did.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye, please.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, 6-0. Thank you for helping. Okay, now we'll move to resolution authorizing the sale of general obligation bonds. Larry Lang.
Thank you, Mayor. I will keep my comments brief on this. The City Council has already authorized the issuance of $44,540,000 worth of general obligation bonds in June of 2008. And by tonight's action, we are asking you to authorize the sale of the bonds based on bids that were received this afternoon. First, a couple of comments. One, we did have these bonds rated by the rating agencies. Moody's maintained the rating that they gave us a year ago on the 2007 general obligation bonds of A1. Standard & Poor's increased the rating that they had from the 2007 GO bonds from A to A+, and in doing that, cited the continued growth, strong management, and the city's proactive and conservative approach. And that was before the All-American Cities Awards, so maybe they'll bump it higher the next time. One difference in the amortization or the debt service of these particular bonds from what we've done in the past, we pulled out the utility portion. The debt service on the utility portion, as we discussed in the council advance, is 30 years, whereas we've been financing those over 15 years generally and 20 years last year, but the utility portion only is for 30 years. The rest of the bonds are for 20 years. Finally, the rates, drum roll. The successful bid on this was from Prager, Seeley and Company, LLC, at 4.58% net effective cost, or net interest cost, rate. That was the successful one. The difference between them and the highest of the 5 received was a total of 7 basis points, or 0.07%, very close in the market there. As a frame of reference for you, the Public Improvement Corporation bonds that we sold last October, I believe it was, for the stadium and the Cleveland Indian Spring Training Facility generated an interest rate of 4.75%. The GO bonds that we sold a year ago for 20 years generated an interest rate of 4.54%. So we're consistent with where we were a year ago, although I think you probably realize the market changed considerably a number of times throughout that year. So with that, it's my recommendation that the City Council adopt Resolution 08-1241. If you have any questions, I'm available. Also, Larry Given from our financial advisor, Peacock, Hislop, Staley, and Given, is here to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to read the resolution by title only, please.
Adopt Resolution 08-1241, providing for the issuance and sale of $44,540,000 aggregate principal amount of general obligation bonds, Series 2008, providing for the annual levy of a tax for the payment of the bonds, accepting a proposal for the purchase of the bonds, approving the form and authorizing the execution of an agreement for the services of a bond registrar, transfer agent, and paying agent, approving the distribution of an official statement in connection with the issuance and sale of the bonds herein authorized, ratifying the actions of city officers and agents concerning the bonds and the distribution of a preliminary official statement pertaining to the bonds, providing certain terms, covenants, and provisions regarding the bonds, and declaring an emergency.
Okay. Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve that resolution?
I move we adopt Resolution 08-1241 as read by the city clerk.
Second.
Motion from Councilmember Lord and a second from Vice Mayor Antoniak. It's open for discussion. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Osborne?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Antoniak?
Aye.
Councilmember Souza?
Aye.
Councilmember Cavalier?
Aye.
Councilmember Lord?
Aye.
Councilmember Holland?
Aye.
Mayor Kavanaugh?
Aye.
Passed 7-0.
Okay, thank you very much. And that completes the business part. Now we'll move to comments, reports on current events by council members. No?
If you want to cap it off on America City, I think you should, not me.
I was going to suggest you do it.
I would suggest you do.
I got a real quick kudos before you get in. We've been getting a lot of, John, you've been sending us forwarding on a lot of those kind of big deal remarks that are coming from the police department. Just want to say I appreciate those, and it's nice to kind of be up to speed with what's going on, but also wanted to add some kudos. Y'all have had some significant events and handled them professionally and with great, I don't know what the word is, but you're doing a good job. So appreciate getting those remarks back from the citizens as well as from staff. So it's nice to get.
Mayor?
Yes.
I just have one comment. I was at the 46th International Making Cities Livable Conference last week, and this was very enlightening. We went through public art, we went through markets, we went through city centers, and how these are developing, not only in the United States, but all over the world. And pretty much many of the countries are doing a really great job, but I think the United States is way ahead of everyone else. We are putting together some beautiful city centers. Germany is right up there with us. The mayor of Freiburg, Germany, was there and presented his city marketplace and city center, and it was quite impressive. But the whole thing was very enlightening, and there was a whole section there with the several artists who came in who do public art and who do monument art for public places like we're doing. And so it was very interesting. In fact, I had lunch with one of the artists, and it was very nice to hear and see what they had done, and they gave me a lot of photographs of their artwork that they have done for civic places and civic centers. It was very, very nice to go to something like this and see what the rest of the country is doing, and the rest of the world for that matter. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. I'll give a quick summary if I could, and I know people want to go home, so it won't be very long. But I would like to endorse the comment by Mr. Gelser. This is a biggie All-America City is probably as good as it gets in the municipality world. We're one of 10 cities in the entire country that in 2008 is a winner, and we need to capitalize on that. We need everybody to know about it, and that's where we need to be heading. But this is sort of a joy to be a part of this group. I'd say 30 to 35 of us went to Tampa, and 2 of us from council, several from staff, but the majority of people were your neighbors. And the reason we went was because of Lori Hillebrands and her neighbors who prepared this. They did it on their time, on their weekend, in their evenings, and they prepared the application. It went to staff, and it was submitted to the National Civic League, and they made us a finalist. And there were 17 at the time, but when we did our proposal, there was only 16 finalists. And but we had, for 2 months, we had our staff, Susan and Nicole and Paula, working with these residents. And the residents did much of the writing, even of the presentation, and they were strong. One of the residents was a network broadcaster or something in California, so she really had her act together in this subject. And they negotiated things between staff and the residents, and finally we came up with just before we left, we had a final agreed-to presentation. We had youngsters, we had adults, we had people from Franklin Pierce and the UIW Cancer Treatment Center. We had a youngster that was supposed to be there who had cancer, and he was going to talk about Goodyear being compassionate, but he became ill, and Susan covered that very well. We had one of our babies vomited on the stage during the presentation. And it wasn't bad. The judges saw it. Well, I don't know how good it was, but it certainly didn't hurt us. In fact, it helped us because it made it look more natural. But we were led onto this stage from the back of the conference room by a youngster, 15 years old, brilliant young lady, 15, and she led this contingent of 30-some people, including that big guy back there, Mark Brown. And she had this chant, and I'd embarrass myself by doing the chant, so I'm not going to do it. But it was a chant she did. We did 4 times, and she led us on that stage. And that said so much to these judges that this town is led by its people, and a lot of young people. So it was a joy to be a part of that. It was a little nerve-wracking when they made the final decision of who were the 10 winners. I sat through most of the presentations, and I said, when I made my comment after we won, I said to the people that as an American I was proud because I saw 16 top-drawer cities, but as a mayor of Goodyear I was worried, I'll tell you that, because they were good. But then I found out that we were a first ballot winner, apparently. In other words, they thought we were good. So we pulled it off. We met a lot of nice people, became great friends with Marana. Marana didn't win, but they were top drawer also. And that relationship, I'm sure, will continue. But you can be proud of your people in this city. They made the difference. We had the best resume. No one brings colleges to their town, and no one builds widens interstates. So we were all alone in those subjects, and that made a difference. And the other towns were largely older towns, but they were much bigger than we are, much more experienced than we are, and yet we competed admirably with them. We're in for another one this end of this month at Most Livable City, believe it or not, and we have a good chance of pulling that one off. So that'll be in Miami, but there's no presentation. We've done that. But this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to be part of that, sort of like back in high school days, except I think we were more excited. And we were screaming and yelling, but so was everybody else, right? Yeah.
We danced for joy.
Yeah, well, Raymond had to leave right after we did it, but I think you agree, it was
Absolutely.
It's a lifetime experience, was it not?
It absolutely was.
Yeah, and Joanne's daughter was a critical part of our element, too.
She spoke on the youth commission, and where she excelled was we had 10 minutes of questions after our performance. So, once you're done, you go, yay, you're not done for 10 more minutes. And your daughter stepped up to the plate on those questions and did quite well and made our city very proud. We thank you for having a daughter such as that.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was, we had, say, 30-some people, and we did not have a weak link, folks. We had 30 stars. I'm serious. Everybody did their job perfectly. It was just great to be a part of it. Anything else on that, Georgia?
No, it's just that I hope other citizens will step forth in a few years when we possibly try this again. We get that city center built. We could be back up there again, and universities will be actually open and running. So we look forward to that.
Yeah, most people don't win this, by the way. This is something special. And if you look at the history in Arizona, the last 59 years, relatively few have won, but a lot haven't won. They tried and competed and didn't. So we tried our first time and won. So there's reason to be proud of being a citizen of Goodyear and an elected official and a staff member. But maybe it's mostly proud to be a person who's one of those 57,000 who just lives here and cares about their community.
Mayor, I'd like to make a comment because I saw the video and I saw this thing on
I'm
TV.
worried about this.
And come on.
It was such a good evening, too.
Until I spoke up. Oh, it's very positive. What I want to say is, seeing that presentation and seeing how you came into the hall and seeing how you did the presentation, it looked like this was totally a group effort. The mayor didn't lead this. No one led it. It was a group effort. This, to me, is an example of where Goodyear can go in the future in the spirit of cooperation and the spirit of working together, everyone working as a team. Now, Goodyear got to this point because they do work closely as a team. And I think that this should impact the rest of the city and the city council into moving in that direction, that we work as a team, because that's the only way you succeed. And that's how they succeeded, as a team. Because I expected to see the mayor come up there and lead this whole thing off and do all, and the mayor didn't do that. It was everyone had equal part and equal voice and equal presentation. That's what makes for a successful city, and successful in anything, but in this case, the city. So you are to be congratulated for having mostly set aside and not.
But that actually was the strength of our team, because many cities had their mayors.
Oh, I understand that, but this is,
and ours was not.
that's why I say this was
yeah.
this was the strength. It's cooperation, it's teamwork, and that's how we will succeed in the future, is teamwork. That's all I want to say. Just my impression.
Yeah, our narrator was a citizen. Think of that. That's great. Okay, comments from the city manager?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have 4 follow-ups. Staff will be developing a communications plan to promote the All-America Cities Award. In fact, we're meeting tomorrow, starting a meeting tomorrow to start the communications plan. We've already started to arrange for the signs, so we're working with ADOT, and we will get those up as quickly as possible. Secondly, the city will actively market the 1.2% retail sales tax rate for the items over $5,000. Thirdly, next year, as part of the annual budget process, we will prepare a presentation to the council to have a conversation regarding the city's overall tax rate and what the implications, costs, benefits are of, let's just say somebody used the example, what if it was 1.8% and this other one was equal to that? So we'll have that conversation. And then finally, we will bring back a proposal to the council regarding the development of a performing arts center, and that will be done by August. So as soon as you come back from the break. That's it right now, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Inquiries of staff by council. Okay, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Okay.